Hi, everybody. I am getting ready to, or I am in the process of designing my um, classroom gamification system for this school year. Tomorrow I head back for meetings, and then Thursday we have our official welcome back to the 2016-2017 school year. And I finally had a chance to sit down and start thinking about my game. Yes, I do procrastinate a bit. I also like to kind of use the energy of a new school year to drive my game. And when the closer I get to thinking about my students, the more I feel infused with their energy and like to channel it into my game. So originally, I was going to go into the school year gamifying using Harry Potter, and I hemmed and hawed a bit, and that's pretty typical me, and ended up changing my mind and going back to Star Wars. I had done a Star Wars Monopoly game 2 years ago, and I really just love Star Wars and what's not fun about it. So I decided to bring it back again. I This will be my fifth gamification experience. My first year, I did 3 mini games, kind of a quarter long each, and last year I did an entire year of Movieopoly, and that was beyond amazing. This year, I'm entering into a full year of gamifying my classroom using the Star Wars theme. I'm super excited, but I'm also super nervous because I'm going to drop the Monopoly board this year and go on my own with no game board. So that will be kind of makes me nervous. That's why my Han Solo is on my dock with my favorite quote, never tell me the odds, to remind me just to go for it and not be nervous. So Star Wars, the Force will be with you, the battle against the dark side. And I have this worksheet here. It holds all my ideas, it holds the basic structure of my game, and it leads my thinking and keeps me on track. So my theme is Star Wars, and what I want to do is take my students from the beginning of the year from becoming a Jedi into space adventures and space quests and alliance missions, and do that with all the Star Wars theme. I teach a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade extended resource special education class. I have students anywhere from 1 to 6 periods a day. So that adds to some complexity when it comes to the game because the game gets played a lot. I will let my students determine how often we play the game. The game will be in effect every day in my classroom. Not all gamifiers do that, but my students need that kind of reinforcement. But in terms of actually moving pieces along on the board, I will have to get my students in the class and get a feel for them and how into the game they are before I decide how often we play it. When I first started, we would play once. When I did my first year long, we'd play once a week, and that quickly became 3 times a week. And then before I knew it, we were playing every day. So my students will drive how often we really dive into the game and are moving the components on the board that I make in my classroom. So when I'm designing my game, I really like to start with the theme. Really helps you kind of wrap your head around where your game is going to be driven, how it gives your imagination kind of something to hook onto. But more than that, it's really important for me to make sure that my game is always driven by goals. Because without a goal to using something, I think that there's not a purpose in using it. So for my students, I'm going to have 2 different levels of goals for my students. A base level, which is for them to improve their student skills, and advanced skills, which is for them to become independent learners and really embrace and start to display some of these more advanced 21st century skills. And when I think about goals for my students, I really think about the student that I want to walk out of my classroom at the end of the school year, and that drives my goal setting. Once I've done that, I start to think about how I want my students to earn points. And in Star Wars, they use galactic credits. And so this year, I did this last year also, I'm going to have a variety of different credits, but my base credits are earned for those simple student skills like being on time and participating appropriately, following directions, and then any other student skills that might pop up during class. And then as the year progresses, other variations of credits will start to emerge. And I've kind of gone ahead and taken those skills that I want to reinforce in my classroom with points and leveled them off. And those skills, when they display them in class, will earn a different kind of credit. And I won't call it a credit, I'll call it something different. And I don't know when these skills will start to come into play. I don't know how I'm going to reinforce them, aside from that it'll be a different kind of monetary system. I'll let the game play out itself, and I'll decide later on how this is all going to work out. But this is just for my organization, kind of like my brain dump. My game will be individual. I'll have anywhere between 5 to 12 kids in my classroom at any given time, and around 10 kids on my caseload for this year. So the game will be individual. They'll each be Jedis, and I'll go on more in a second. So my students will earn points, like I mentioned before. There'll be base level galactic credits, and then there'll be varying different currencies. I did go on Wikipedia, which is an incredible resource for any Star Wars game developers, and looked up some different names of different currencies. So I'm playing around with some ideas for what I can call my different currencies as the game becomes more advanced. I also need to decide how I'm going to give out points to my students, and I'm going to start off with paper points. 1 point per ticket. I'm going to make them gold. Call them galactic credits. I think I mentioned that before. I have never had a problem with students not hanging on to their points. When the game is interesting and intriguing and the points are useful, students will hang on to their points. Once we get to second or third quarter, it could even be first quarter, and I know that my students understand the meaning of the points and the credits, and they're reinforcing the skills that I want, so I'm getting good results. I'm seeing students improving their skills and working towards goals. We will move to Google Forms, and each student will have an individual point sheet that they will update period by period, and then we'll find time in our day to add up those points daily so they know how many credits they have. It's also nice to have those individual point sheets because I can assign specific behaviors and goals to each student's point sheets and reinforce those skills that way, and other students really don't know what the other students are earning points for, but they're very individualized towards the students and what they need to work on. As for what students will be able to earn be able to do with their points, I've started a list of ideas, and I went on to the Star Wars wiki, and it was great because I could copy the topics and then paste them into the doc, and there's the link right there. So when I'm ready to use these, I can go into the wiki and look at all those ideas. But here's just my starters for ideas of what things students can use their points for. I'm super excited to have so many already on the list, and these are just single topics that they could break down into more, so many other things, but it's just fun to have it all here. Like I said, I keep this doc. It's a working document that I like to keep all my resources and ideas on that I'll come back and look at frequently. And then this is in a Google Drive folder where I keep all the other things that I create so that I can easily go back to them and print them whenever I need them. After I've decided or started to think about what students can do with their points, and you want to make it meaningful, and because you want students to want to, have fun using their points. It's no fun playing a game if there's nothing good to use your points with. Then I also want to make sure that I have a leaderboard, or like I like to think of it as something that shows the game's progress. It doesn't necessarily have to be all the points on a leaderboard like I would think of from like Pac-Man back in the day. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a leaderboard with the points. It has to show students' progress and give students an idea of who is doing better than the other. Kind of adds a minor competition element to it. So students will have individual boards. I use a big piece of cardstock white paper, and they will have their faces on there, and then different levels of Jedi powers. They'll be able to own powers and weapons, school-appropriate weapons, of course, equipment, etc., and this will all be displayed on their individual game board. And then once students start to travel into space and travel in the galaxies, right? Because Star Wars has tons of galaxies, hyperspace, hyperdrive. Then they'll be able to move their character along in space, and that will go along my wall in my classroom, and the players in the game will be able to see, based on how a student's game board looks and how far they've traveled, we'll be able to see which Jedi is making the most progress and who's the leader. I will have a marketplace. I call it a commissary because that's what they call it in Star Wars, and students will be able to barter, trade, and sell goods in the commissary. And as for what the game space will look like, I already kind of explained that a little bit. And through the space travel, once they get to that point, after they've become Jedis, the space travel will consist of them traveling to different moons and different planets, and each planet will have different quests attached to them, and then students might receive rebel missions depending on where they are in space. And then space itself will have an adventure. I'll probably have some Easter eggs along the way, hidden points of contact when they're traveling in space, that if they hit a spot, and there'll be a surprise challenge for them along the way, or a surprise award or something they'll have to battle or discover. So that will be super fun. I will have bonuses, and that will depend on how the game progresses. I haven't thought of any yet. I really like the students to drive this kind of thing, and being with the students and using their energy, I use them to motivate and inspire that portion of the game. As for right now, I do levels in my games. I know, remembering last year's kids, how they moved through levels, it was a strong behavior system. I don't think that this year's group will need that kind of intensity, so I will have to wait and see what skill my students need to work on the most, and I like to use that skill to determine how they move through the levels. But I do know that level 1 is going to be Jedi training, and so I went ahead and copied the different levels of Jedi. So I'll do that. I'm not sure if all 4 of these will be in one level or they'll be spread out. I do know that I think for level 2, the Jedi will be able to find or purchase a sidekick, or hire, I should say, probably a sidekick. Think R2-D2, Chewbacca kind of things, which I think will be super fun. Level 2 Jedi will probably also get some form of transportation, not sure what. And then on level 3, they'll be able to add add-ons to their transportation. I can thank my daughters for that idea. I thought that was pretty awesome. So that's where I'm at right now with my game. I thought you guys might enjoy hearing and seeing my process. If you have any questions, you can email me at Carrie Baughcum, BAUCARRIE BAUGHCUM and I'd be happy to answer them for you, or idea talk about any games that you might have ideas for and need help. And I will keep everybody updated as the year goes on.